You'll never find better than me. That's what Parker Holt told me. It wasn't a warning, it was a branding. A curse he'd etched onto my self-worth with the steady hand of a man who knows exactly how to break something valuable and make it look like an accident. My name is June Calder. I'm 27 years old, and I spend my days mending the wounds of instruments worth more than the building I live in. I'm a luthier. I understand precision. I understand the delicate balance required to make something broken sing again. But I couldn't fix the crack Parker left in me. It wasn't a clean split, not like old spruce running with the grain. It was a spiderweb fracture, the kind you find in a cello that's been dropped just one too many times, the kind that deadens the sound, no matter how perfectly you reset the sound post. His voice, that dismissive, confident baritone, still echoes in my workshop on Marrow Street. It hits me when I'm testing the resonance of a restored viola, the A string sounding flat and hollow. It hits me when I'm invoicing a client, my hand hesitating over the total, always hearing his voice, telling me I was charging too much, that I was lucky to have the work at all. I live in the small loft above my shop. The air is thick with the ghosts of music and the sharp, clean smells of turpentine, sandalwood, and varnish. It's supposed to be the smell of history, of preservation, but for the last 6 months, it's just smelled like solitude. Parker had controlled my life by controlling the numbers. He managed my books. He advised me on my rates. He held the financial string of my life so tightly that by the time he left, I'd forgotten how to support my own weight. I live quietly now. I count my clients like I count my pennies meticulously, and with the constant low-grade fear that this month won't be the month I finally break even. You'll never find better than me. I was drawing a horsehair bow across a newly strung violin, listening for the wolf tone, that one sour note that hides in the wood when my phone buzzed. It was Mira Santos. Mira is my only anchor to the world outside my dusty windows. She's a night shift nurse at Lakefield General, which means her morning is my happy hour. She sees real trauma every night, so she has zero patience for my brand of self-pity. "June," she said, her voice already sounding tired of the argument we hadn't had yet, "you are coming to the Harbor Line broadcast party tonight. 8 o'clock? No." I closed my eyes, the smell of rosin sharp in my nose. "Mira, I can't. I have that 1905 cello, the one with the warped bridge." "The cello can wait. Parker can't." My stomach hollowed out. The cold, familiar dread. He's going to be there. "He is," she confirmed, "with the new girlfriend, the one who does the traffic report. Of course." Parker, who managed the station's finances, dating an on-air personality. It was a lateral move in status. "Which is exactly why you are going. You've been hiding in that loft for half a year. June, you are going to put on a dress, you are going to let me buy you a drink, and you are going to show that manipulative bastard that you can still breathe on your own." "I don't think I'm ready." "You're never ready to take out the trash, June. You just do it because it's starting to stink. Be ready by 7:30. I'm picking you up." The line clicked dead. I looked around the workshop. Dust motes danced in the single beam of afternoon light. I was tired. Not just tired from the work, but tired of the ghost. Mira was right. I couldn't keep running. I chose my armor carefully. A simple black dress with a square-cut neckline. It was modest, but it was the only thing I owned that wasn't stained with wood glue. And over it, my father's old leather jacket. He'd worn it riding his motorcycle through the Cascades. It was cracked and worn, and it still smelled faintly of motor oil and cold pine. It was the only thing I owned that felt bulletproof. Lakefield was doing its usual moody performance. A heavy, wet fog rolled off the water, swallowing the Harbor Line tower lights until they were just damp bruises in the night sky. The party was in the main lobby, a 3-story atrium of glass and steel that felt too bright, too loud. Champagne flutes clinked like nervous laughter. Everyone was selling something, a new show, a new image, a new, heavily curated version of themselves. I saw Parker immediately. He was standing near the main broadcast booth, his hand resting possessively on the waist of the traffic girl. She was blonde, bubbly, and laughing too hard at something he'd said. He hadn't seen me yet. My first instinct was to turn and leave, to retreat to the smell of varnish and the safety of my work, but Mira had my elbow in a death grip. "We're getting a drink," she muttered, pulling me toward the bar. I was scanning the crowd, trying to map Parker's location so I could maintain a safe orbit. When I saw him, I didn't know his name. Not then, but I knew his reputation. Marrow Street was my street, and he was the man who owned its shadows. The man who owned the trucks, the warehouses, and the silence of the dock workers. Cassian Vale. He was maybe 35, dressed in a dark suit that probably cost more than my rarest violin. It was tailored so perfectly it looked less like clothing and more like a second skin. He was shaking hands with a city councilman, and the councilman looked terrified, nodding and smiling like a puppet. People didn't just move out of Cassian Vale's way, they parted. The air around him seemed denser, quieter. He was the eye of the storm. "Don't stare," Mira hissed, handing me a club soda. "That's the Marrow Street Collective. They're not nice." "He's on my street," I whispered, watching him. "He owns your street, June. Just don't." I turned back to the bar, taking a sip. The cold water doing nothing to steady my nerves. I just needed to survive 1 hour, 60 minutes, then I could go home. I finished the drink too quickly and turned to head back to Mira, who had already been swallowed by a group of nurses from her floor. I wasn't watching where I was going. My heel, worn down on one side from the walk to the grocer, caught the heavy bass of a floor monitor speaker. I didn't fall. A hand landed flat on the small of my back. It wasn't a shove, it wasn't a caress, it was an anchor. It was solid, immediate, and completely, impossibly steady. It was like an emergency brake being pulled in a hurricane. It didn't just stop me, it grounded me. I stabilized. My breath caught in my throat. I turned. My gaze met his. Cassian Vale. His eyes weren't black, as the rumors insisted. They were a dark, clear gray, like the lake just before a storm. He hadn't moved his hand yet, just held me steady as the crowd flowed around us like water around a stone. And over his shoulder, I saw Parker. Parker, who had been laughing, froze. His smile didn't just fade, it cracked, it splintered. His eyes went cold. That familiar, proprietary chill that I knew better than my own reflection. His hand tightened on the new girl's waist, pulling her closer. I heard his voice, a low hiss meant only for me, even across the 10 feet of noise separating us. Cheap theatrics, June. My blood turned to ice. The old shame, the automatic flinch. I felt my spine curve, the instinct to make myself smaller. Cassian Vale must have felt the tension shift in my back. His hand finally dropped away. The loss of its warmth, immediate. But he didn't move. He hadn't looked at Parker. He was looking only at me. "You okay?" His voice was low, clean, no arrogance, no flirtation, just observation. I nodded, unable to find my voice. His gaze drifted down to my hands, which I was clenching at my sides. He looked at my fingertips, then at the calluses on my left hand. A flicker of something recognition passed through his eyes. "Luthier," he said. It wasn't a question, it was a statement of fact. I blinked, thrown. How did you know? "The calluses." He glanced at my right hand, still clutching my empty glass. The faint smell of turpentine under the soap. Precision work. You fix things. He looked back at my face. Cassian Vale. He offered his name like a piece of collateral, not an introduction. June Calder, I managed, my voice sounding thin. Before I could say anything else, the music died. The bright, obnoxious pop song cut off mid-chorus. The spotlight scanning the atrium flickered once, twice, and went out. The entire lobby was plunged into the emergency lighting, a sickly, dim red glow that cast long, monstrous shadows. A confused murmur went through the crowd, a technical glitch. Then I heard the shouting. It wasn't party loud, it was backstage. Dangerous. "Where is the box, the Harbor Line box?" a voice snarled. It was metallic, amplified by panic or a megaphone. I couldn't tell. People started to back away from the stage, confused. I saw Parker grab his new girlfriend by the arm and pull her toward the main revolving doors. He didn't even look back at me. "It's not here, I told you. We don't have it." That was the station manager, his voice cracking. A sound cut through the air. It wasn't a bang. It was a sharp hiss, followed by a metallic pop, like compressed air escaping. I watched, frozen, as the high-mounted security camera above the backstage door sparked and its little red light died. My heart stopped. That wasn't a glitch. That was a silenced weapon. The crowd's murmur turned into a collective gasp. The panic became real. A slow surge toward the exits. I was rooted to the spot, my feet suddenly made of lead. A hand grabbed my elbow, firm, not rough, Cassian. He didn't pull me. He guided me, moving against the flow of the terrified crowd. "Not the main doors," he said, his voice level. "This way." He pushed open a heavy steel door marked Emergency Exit C, leading into a dark concrete stairwell. The air was cold, smelling of damp cement. He moved me in front of him, into the shadow, shielding me with his body. Another bot sound echoed from the hall, closer this time, followed by the sound of a champagne bottle shattering. I was trembling, the old leather jacket suddenly feeling as thin as tissue paper. Cassian stood in the doorway, a silhouette against the red chaos of the lobby, scanning the hall. He looked back at me, his face lost in the darkness of the stairwell. He let the heavy door click almost shut, plunging us into near blackness, leaving only a sliver of red light. "Stay with me," he said. His voice was the calmest thing in the building. "It's not safe here." He put his hand on my back again. It wasn't to steady me this time. It was to keep me moving, to shield me. It was the beginning of something I didn't understand. It felt like an opening commitment. The heavy steel door clicked shut, sealing us in darkness. The sudden silence was louder than the panic in the lobby. I could hear my own breathing, sharp and shallow. Cassian didn't move for a second, just listened. From the other side of the door, the muffled sounds of chaos grew, shouting, the heavy thud of something being overturned. "They're not station security," Cassian said, his voice a low vibration in the concrete box. "They're organized." "Who?" I whispered, my voice sounding like dry leaves. "The Grigori Syndicate, and they aren't here for the champagne." He took a small radio from his jacket pocket. "Jax, where are you?" A crackle of static. "Sublevel 2, Garage Bay 7, we have a problem. They've got the main exits covered, front and side." "They're flushing the building," Cassian said, more to himself than to me. "They're after the tapes." "Tapes. The Harbor Line box," he clarified, his attention absolute, his eyes scanning the darkness above us. "The station manager has been sitting on recordings, inconvenient recordings about the Bureau of Urban Integrity, the BUI." My blood chilled. Everyone in Lakefield knew the BUI. They were the city agency supposedly responsible for rooting out financial corruption. They were also, as rumor had it, the most effective shakedown operation in the state. "The BUI and Grigori," I asked. "Oil and water. Grigori wants the leverage. The BUI wants their secrets buried, and we're stuck in the middle." He keyed the radio again. "Jax, they're using the stairwells as a choke point. Get to the B-level access corridor. We'll meet you. Go dark." "Copy." Cassian put his hand back on my shoulder. "We're going down." He moved with an unnerving confidence in the dark, one hand on the railing, the other lightly guiding me. We descended 2 flights, the concrete steps muffling our footsteps. The air grew colder, heavier. Then, just as we reached the next landing, the door above us burst open, slamming against the wall. Heavy footsteps pounded down the stairs, not running, marching. Cassian pulled me into the narrow space beneath the staircase, a small recess filled with junction boxes. He put himself between me and the opening, pressing us both into the cold wall. My heart was a hammer against my ribs. I squeezed my eyes shut, my father's leather jacket suddenly feeling useless. 2 men passed our landing. They were dressed in black, carrying heavy bags, not looking, their focus on the floors below. Cashin didn't breathe. I didn't breathe. They passed. Their steps faded downward. He waited 5 full seconds, then 10. "Now," he whispered. He didn't take the stairs. He pushed open the landing door into a long, fluorescent-lit service hallway. Pipes and conduits lined the ceiling. We moved fast, my heels catching slightly on the grimy tile. "Where?" "The garage. Jax will have a car running." We rounded a corner and almost ran right into him. "Parker." He was standing there, his face pale and slick with sweat, his expensive shirt wrinkled. He wasn't with the traffic girl. He was alone, and he was blocking the path. "June," he spat. His eyes flicked from me to Cassian, a toxic mix of fear and his old, familiar contempt. "Wow, you really traded up fast, didn't you?" "What, the fiddle-fixing business finally dried up." "Parker, get out of the way," I said, my voice shaking but cold. "Is that what this is?" He took a step toward me, his smile a thin, ugly line. "You walk into a party with the king of the Marrow Street gutter, hoping to make me jealous pathetic." "This isn't the time, Parker." I tried to step around him. He grabbed my arm, hard, the way he used to. "No, you don't walk away from me. You never—" He saw the small bag I carried, a simple leather satchel with my wallet and keys. His eyes narrowed. "What did you take?" he hissed, his face contorting. "You were backstage. Did you take the box? Are you trying to set me up?" He lunged for my bag, his fingers clawing at the strap. It was over before I could even scream. Cassian didn't raise his voice. He didn't throw a punch. He simply moved. He stepped in, intercepting Parker's wrist. It wasn't a slap, it was a capture. His grip was absolute. I heard a sharp, sickening pop as he rotated Parker's arm, leveraging his own momentum against him. Parker's eyes went wide with shock, his mouth opening in a silent O of pain. With his other hand, Cassian took hold of Parker's shoulder and drove him hard into the drywall. The wall gave with a dull crunch. Parker's head snapped back, his breath leaving him in a ragged gasp. Cassian didn't hold him there. He simply released his grip. Parker crumpled, sliding down the wall into a messy, whimpering heap, clutching his dislocated wrist. It was brutal. It was efficient, yet it was completely devoid of anger. It was like watching a machine perform a function. I was trembling, the adrenaline making my vision swim. I looked at Parker, then at Cassian. He was already looking at me, his face impassive, checking me for a reaction. "Are you hurt?" I shook my head, my throat too tight to speak. My mind registered something crucial in that moment. As I stood there, shaking but not broken, I realized something about the hand that had been on my back, the man who had just dismantled my tormentor. Parker's touch had always been about owning. It was a brand, a claim. Cassian's touch, it was different. It was a shield. It was there to protect. It wasn't holding me. It was holding the world off me. A sudden, piercing shriek echoed through the building. The fire alarm. "He's right about one thing," Cassian said, his voice urgent as he pulled me away from Parker's groaning form. "They're trying to set someone up." We burst through a final set of doors into the parking garage. The air was thick and hazy. "It's not fire," I choked, my eyes stinging. "It's smoke, like a canister." "Covers the cameras, creates chaos," Cassian said, scanning the rows of parked cars. "They're not just stealing, they're creating a diversion for the exit." The strobing emergency lights of the alarm system cut through the artificial fog, turning the garage into a disorienting, pulsing red nightmare. A black SUV, so large it looked military, roared around the corner and skidded to a stop in front of us. The passenger door flew open. "Get in," Cassian ordered. I scrambled inside, sliding onto the cold leather. Cassian was in beside me in a second, slamming the heavy, armored-sounding door. The driver, a man with a shaved head and a scar that ran from his temple to his jaw, didn't even look at us. He just hit the gas. The SUV fishtailed, its tires screaming, and shot toward the exit ramp. Jax, Cassian said. Where's Mira Santos? Block behind us. Blue sedan, she's clear. The driver, Jax, replied, his voice like gravel. I looked back. Through the smoke, I saw Mira's little Toyota peel out from a different exit, heading in the opposite direction, toward the hospital. She was safe. She had her shift. A bubble of hysterical laughter threatened to rise in my throat. My friend was going to clock in after a high-speed escape. We burst out onto the street. The tires hitting the wet pavement, Jax didn't slow down. He ran the first red light, then the second, weaving through the late-night traffic with terrifying precision. They'll have the bridges watched, Cassian said, looking into the side mirror. Take the lower viaduct. Get us to the water. Got a tail, Jax said, his eyes on the rear view. Black sedan, 2018 model. Cassian didn't even turn. Lose it. Jax nodded. He cranked the wheel, pulling us into a one-way street against traffic. Horns blared. We scraped the side of a delivery van, the sound a horrifying screech of metal, but the SUV didn't even shudder. We shot through an alley, scattering dumpsters, and emerged 3 blocks over, heading south. After 5 minutes of the most aggressive driving I'd ever experienced, Jax finally eased off the gas. We were on the waterfront, the dark, choppy surface of the lake absorbing the city lights. The fog was thicker here. We're clear, boss, Jax said. Cassian just nodded. He turned to me. The adrenaline was starting to fade, leaving me feeling hollowed out and cold. Did you have the recordings? He asked, his voice flat. What? No, of course not. I just fix violins. Parker seemed to think you did. He's paranoid. He thought I was there to spy on him. I wrapped my arms around myself, the motion pulling at my father's jacket, and I felt it. Something small, hard, and angular in the inner breast pocket, a pocket I never used. My blood ran cold. My fingers, shaking, fumbled with the zipper. I reached inside. It wasn't my wallet. It wasn't a key. It was a small, silver USB drive. It was wrapped tightly, almost obsessively, in black electrical tape. No, I whispered. I pulled it out, staring at it in the dim light of the dashboard. No. Parker, back in the lobby, when he'd hissed at me. He hadn't just been posturing. He'd been within arm's reach. He must have seen the chaos starting, seen me near Cassian, and in a moment of sheer, cowardly panic, he'd slipped it into my pocket. He'd made me the mule. Cassian looked at the drive in my hand. His expression didn't change, but his gray eyes hardened. He planted it on you, Cassian stated. He must have, at the party, oh God, I was going to be sick. Give it to me, Jax said from the front seat. No, Cassian said. He held my gaze. That's it, isn't it? The BUI negotiations, the recordings. I don't want it, I said, my voice cracking. I tried to shove it at him. Please take it. This has nothing to do with me. I just wanted to go to a party. Cassian didn't move. He wouldn't take it. If I take that, June, he said, his voice quiet but intense, you become my problem. You become a piece on my board, the Grigori Syndicate. The BUI, they'll see you as my asset, and you'll be treated like one. But if I keep it? If you keep it, it's yours. It's your information, your choice. Right now, they don't know who has it. Parker doesn't know you found it. The only people who know it exists are in this car. And us, he said, nodding toward Jax. We don't talk. He was offering me something Parker never had, a choice, a terrible, terrifying choice. I can't. I looked at the drive, a small silver bomb in my hand. Where do I go? I can't go home. Parker knows where I live. No, you can't, Cassian agreed. He looked at Jax. The Argent. Jax nodded. Top floor is clean. The Argent Hotel, Cassian said to me. The penthouse floor is private. No one gets up without a key. No one knows you're there. Jax will take you. He took a business card from his wallet. It was heavy, black stock, with only a 10-digit number embossed on it. He wrote a second number on the back. This top number is the code for the elevator. The second, he said, tapping the handwritten digits. is Jax's private line. Not his work phone, his private line. You call it if you see a shadow you don't like. You call it if the wind blows the wrong way. Do you understand? I nodded, my fingers closing around the card. Jax pulled the SUV to a stop in a dark, private alley behind a gleaming steel and glass skyscraper. Go in the service entrance, Cassian said. The elevator will be waiting. I looked at him, at this man who owned the shadows of my street, who had just saved my life and simultaneously thrown it into chaos. Why are you doing this? Because, Cassian Vale said, his gray eyes fixed on mine. I don't like when people break things just to see them fall. I got out of the car, the door shut behind me with the heavy, final thunk of a vault. I stood in the alley, clutching a taped-up USB drive and a phone number, and watched the taillights of the SUV disappear into the fog. I looked up at the hotel, then out toward the lake. The city lights were just a faint, trembling pulse behind the mist. They looked like the unsteady rhythm of a new heartbeat. I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that I had just stepped into a different key. The simple, quiet melody of my life was over. And this new arrangement, it was going to be dangerous. The Argent Hotel penthouse was like a museum exhibit on how the rich hide. The air was scrubbed clean, the carpets were so thick they absorbed all sound, and the view of Lakefield was a silent, glittering panorama of a city that suddenly felt alien. It was safe. It was sterile. And after 6 hours, I was suffocating. It didn't smell right. My home, my life smelled of rosin, wood glue, and the sharp, comforting bite of turpentine. This place smelled like nothing. I left at dawn. I didn't call Jax. I didn't take the private elevator. I took the service stairs down 21 floors and hailed a cab 2 blocks away, paying cash. I couldn't live in a gilded cage. Not his, not anyone's. When I unlocked the triple bolt on my workshop door on Marrow Street, the familiar scent hit me, and for the first time since the party, my shoulders dropped. This was my territory. My unfinished project was waiting, glowing in the weak morning light, a late 1940s cello, a beautiful piece with a stubborn wolf tone on the G string. I sat on my stool, picked up my best bow, and drew it across the string. Bzz. There it was. That sour, vibrating buzz, the sound of a flaw deep in the wood. I closed my eyes. I didn't think about Cassian's calculated calm, or Parker's desperate cruelty, or the feel of a silenced weapon cutting the air. I just listened to the string. I listened for the imperfection. This, I understood. This I could mend. The steady resonance of the wood, even flawed, grounded me. The USB drive was a heavy, toxic weight in my jacket pocket. Cassian had given me a choice. If I take it, you become my problem. If you keep it, it's yours. He'd laid out the trap perfectly. If I gave it to him, I was his pawn. If I kept it, I was a target for everyone else. I wouldn't be either. I picked up my phone and called Mira. She picked up on the 3rd ring, her voice thick with sleep. You alive? Mostly, Mira, I need a lawyer. Not one of Parker's $1,000 an hour sharks. I need someone real. Tara Wynn, she said, instantly awake. Community Law Center over on 8th. She took on that landlord in the garment district and won. She eats developers for breakfast. What did you do? June. I'll tell you later. Send me the address. I made my decision. I would not be defined by what Parker did to me or by what Cassian Vale might do. The USB was a sickness. I was going to quarantine it. I put the cello down, grabbed my coat, and walked. I walked. I didn't take a cab straight to Tara Wynn's office. I was back in the workshop an hour later, the USB drive safely tucked in Tara's office, safe. A copy of a copy hidden somewhere only she knew. I felt lighter. I felt like I could breathe again. I was meticulously planning the feat of a new bridge for the cello when the bell over my shop door jingled. I went rigid. My stomach dropped. The old panic flaring hot and fast, I gripped the small, razor-sharp plane in my hand. But it wasn't a man in a suit. It was a woman. She looked to be in her mid-20s, dressed in black jeans and a worn leather jacket that looked suspiciously like mine. She had the same dark, intense hair as Cassian and the exact same storm gray eyes, but where his were steady and calculating, hers were restless, sharp, and slightly annoyed at the world. She was carrying a heavy-duty viola case. "June Calder?" she asked. Her voice was a low alto, clipped. "That's me." She set the case on my workbench and flipped the latches. "Can you fix this?" I looked inside. The instrument was beautiful, a rich, dark-flamed maple. It was also a mess. The bridge was snapped in half, and a hairline crack ran from the right F-hole up toward the tailpiece. It looked like it had been dropped, hard. "The bridge is firewood," I said, lifting the instrument gently. "I'll have to carve a new one from a blank. The crack that's serious. I can stabilize it, clamp it, maybe use some hide glue, but its voice will change." I don't care," she said, watching my hands, not my face. "I don't care what it costs. I care if it's right. Can you make it sing again?" I met her gaze. That's what I do. She didn't leave, the way most clients did. She pulled up a stool and just watched. She didn't talk. She observed me as I took calipers to the fingerboard, as I measured the precise curve of the belly, as I selected a raw, pale maple bridge, blank. "You're not just going to patch the old one?" she asked, her voice skeptical. "Patching is a short-term fix," I said, my knife making the first long, shaving cut. "It kills the resonance. The feet of the bridge have to be a perfect 100% match to the curve of the top, even a hair's width gap, and the sound gets trapped in the wood. It won't transfer. It'll sound muffled." She nodded, a small, sharp acknowledgement. Precision. We sat in silence for almost an hour, the only sounds the shh of my knife carving the maple and the distant hum of Marrow Street. We were communicating not with words, but with the shared, quiet language of craft. It was the most normal I'd felt in days. My phone, sitting on the bench, buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. "Give me back my thing. You have no idea what you're doing. June, you're swimming with sharks. Parker." My hand, the one holding the knife, stopped moving. A cold tremor ran up my arm. The woman on the stool saw it. Her gray eyes narrowed. Just a fraction. I put the knife down. I took a deep breath. I looked at the text. Then, deliberately, I blocked the number. I picked the knife back up. My next cut was clean. The bell over the door jingled again. This time, my blood froze solid. 2 men. They were not musicians. They were built like refrigerators, dressed in suits that were too tight in the shoulders. They blocked the light from the door. "Shop's closed," I said. My voice was tight. "Sign says open," the taller one said. He had a flat, broken nose. His eyes weren't looking at the instruments. They were cataloging the room. They slid over me, then over Rowan, who had tensed on her stool. "I'm with a client. We're closed. Please leave." The men exchanged a look. The shorter one took a step inside the shop. "We're just browsing, sweetheart." Rowan stood up. She didn't look afraid. She looked bored, which was somehow more terrifying. "I asked you to leave," I said, my voice rising. My free hand slid under the workbench. My fingers brushed against cold plastic. A small, square button. It was new. It wasn't there last week. Cassian. He'd had someone Jax install it, probably while I was hiding at the Argent. A silent alarm. I pressed it. I held it down for 1 full second. "This is a private appointment," I said, my voice ice. "Get out! Now!" The tall one chuckled, a low, ugly sound. "Or what you gonna hit me with that little wood shaver?" A black SUV, the same one from last night, mounted the curb with a heavy thud and screeched to a halt, blocking the entire storefront. Jax got out. He didn't run. He just unfolded himself from the driver's seat, a man with all the time in the world. The 2 men in my shop saw him. Their bravado evaporated like water on a hot stove. The tall one's face went pale. "We were just leaving," he muttered. They turned, clumsy in their haste, and practically fell out the door, walking fast down Marrow Street, disappearing around the corner. Jack stepped into the doorway, his eyes scanning the shop. He looked at me. "Miss Calder, you're okay." "I am now." He nodded. "They left something." He pointed to the sidewalk, a plain manila envelope. Jax put on a pair of thin leather gloves from his pocket, picked it up, and looked inside. His expression, usually granite, tightened. He handed it to me. My stomach turned to water. Photographs. Candid. Me, walking to the deli yesterday, looking over my shoulder. Me, leaving Tara Wynn's office not an hour ago. Me, through the window of my shop, taken from across the street. Rowan looked over my shoulder at the pictures. "Well," she said, her voice dripping sarcasm, "at least they're not blurry." She looked at Jax, a flash of recognition in her eyes. "Ren, 4 minutes. That's a new record." Jax just grunted. "Boss will be in touch." He turned, got back in the SUV, and was gone. I looked at Rowan. Vale, I said, remembering the intake form. "Rowan Vale." She gave me a thin, wry smile. "His sister. Don't hold it against me. My Viola." She tapped the bench. "Thursday." "Thursday," I confirmed, my mind reeling. That night, I learned the new rules. I checked my rearview mirror every 10 seconds. I took 3 different turns to get to the grocery store, just to see if anyone followed. I didn't listen to music when I walked. I kept my head up, my shoulders back, my gaze scanning reflections in shop windows. I refused to look like a victim. A text came through just as I was locking the shop. Cassian. "Don't let them set your rhythm. Let me take you to dinner. 8 tonight, the Rookery." It wasn't a question. It was a lifeline. A dangerous one, but it was the only one I had. I was tired of being afraid. The Rookery was old-world Lakefield, dark mahogany, deep leather booths, and the smell of bourbon and steak. Jax was posted by the door, invisible to everyone but me. Cassian was in the back booth. He stood when I got there. "June." "Cassian," I slid into the booth. "Your men are fast. They need to be. You're okay. They left photos." His face hardened. "I know, it's a warning. Grigori's move." They knew I went to the lawyer. They knew, which means Parker's talking to them. The waiter came. We ordered. The small talk was almost comical. We talked about the weather, the fog, and then I had to ask. "Your sister," I said. "She has your eyes." He looked down at his hands, which were resting on the table. They were strong, scarred, the knuckles scraped. They were not the hands of a CEO. "I used to play," he said, cutting me off before I could ask. I blinked. "What?" "Violin. My mother made me. I played for about 2 years, when I was 12. "What happened?" He flexed his right hand. The skin was tight over the knuckles. Life. I started driving for the collective when I was 16. Long hauls, 12, sometimes 15 hours a day. Holding a steering wheel that long. For that many years, it stiffens the wrist. The finesse, it's gone. He tried to curve his pinky, as if holding a bow, but the muscle fought him. You can't hold the bow right. It's all in the wrist. I knew exactly what he meant. It's not just the wrist. It's the shoulder. It's breathing. He looked at me. A flicker of that same vulnerability I'd seen in his sister. I was terrible anyway. Everyone is terrible at first. After dinner, Jax drove us back to Marrow Street. I don't know why I did it. Maybe I wanted to see if there was a human being inside the armor. "Wait here," and I said. I unlocked my shop. The violation of the broken window, now boarded up by Jax's people, made my stomach clench. I ignored it. I went to the back room and grabbed a cheap, half-size student violin. I came back out. Cassian was standing awkwardly in the middle of my shop, looking too big for the space. "Here." I handed him the small violin and bow. He looked at it like it was a snake. "June, I haven't held one of these in 20 years. "Chin on the rest," I instructed. "Relax your shoulder." He tucked the violin under his chin. He was rigid, his shoulder hiked up to his ear. "Breathe," I said. I handed him the bow. He gripped it like a hammer. "No." I stepped closer. The air between us was suddenly electric. Like this. I touched his hand. His skin was warm, the calluses rough. I gently uncurled his fingers, repositioning them. Thumb bent, pinky curved, let gravity do the work. You're not strangling it. You're guiding it. He stared at our hands. His breath held. Now just draw it across the open E string. Slow. Breathe out as you pull. He drew the bow. The sound that came out was a high-pitched, agonizing screech, a sound like a dying animal. He winced, his face flushing. See, terrible. You're forcing it. You're all muscle. I smiled. It was the first real, unguarded smile I'd had in months. You're trying to control it. You can't. You have to let it resonate again and breathe. He tried again. Scree-e, a little better. A note. A very, very ugly note. A low chuckle started in his chest, a real laugh. I'm a menace. You're a beginner, I said, laughing with him. We were standing close enough that I could smell the faint, clean scent of his soap under the leather of his jacket. The distance between us wasn't just small, it was intimate. He carefully set the violin down. His gaze was heavy. I won't promise you that you'll be safe. June, he said, his voice low, echoing the honesty I craved. I can't. This world, the one you just stepped into, it isn't safe, but I will promise you this. He held my eyes. I will always tell you the truth, even when it's hard to swallow. I nodded. Honesty. I could work with honesty. We walked outside to the waiting SUV. The street was quiet. Jax was alert. Scanning the rooftops, Cassian opened the passenger door for me. Just as I was about to get in, Jax's head snapped to the left. Boss, alley, 9 o'clock. 2 motorcycles. They shot out of the darkness, their engines roaring to life, not at us, but at the shop. Cassian reacted instantly. He didn't pull me toward the car. He shoved me back, into the brick alcove of my doorway, shielding me with his own body. Get down! A sound like a gunshot, but not. It was a smack, followed by the sickening, explosive tinkle of shattering glass. A brick sailed through the large, newly boarded-up front window of my shop, taking the rest of the frame with it. The motorcycles were already gone, disappearing into the industrial haze of the docks. It was over in 3 seconds. I was breathing hard, my heart hammering. Cassian hadn't moved. He was still braced in front of me. He turned, slowly, and looked at the devastation. The brick lay on the floor, surrounded by a fresh cascade of glass. It was wrapped in black electrical tape. A reminder, Cassian said, his voice a low, dangerous rumble. The game is open. The sound of the brick shattering my shop window was a declaration of war. That taped-up brick wasn't just vandalism. It was a message from Grigory. They knew. Or, at least, they knew Parker thought I had the drive. Cassian's promise, I will always tell you the truth, was now hanging in the air, smelling of rain and shattered glass. The game is open, he'd said. I hated that he was right. The next morning, I didn't hide. I didn't call Jax. I took the real USB from its hiding place, a hollowed-out block of spruce I kept for bass bars, and I met Tara Wynn at a sterile coffee shop 4 miles from her office. She brought a laptop that looked like it had survived a war, a clean machine that had never touched the internet. She plugged in the drive. Her expression, usually so open and empathetic, became a mask of cold, professional focus. She scrolled. She clicked. Her jaw tightened. Well, June, she said, finally looking up. Her voice was low. This isn't just smoke. This is the entire building on fire. What is it? I whispered, my coffee untouched. It's him, Vesper Lang, the director of the Bureau of Urban Integrity, the most powerful, untouchable man in Lakefield city government. It's audio, clear audio, time-stamped, him, negotiating compliance fees with a man he calls G. Grigory, I breathed. And worse, she turned the laptop screen. It was a scanned document, a ledger, digital receipts for cash transfers, offshore account numbers, dates, amounts. Vesper Lang isn't just ignoring the city's corruption. He's the chief accountant. I felt the floor drop out from under me. We go to the police. Tara gave a short, bitter laugh. The police? The Lakefield PD's Internal Affairs Division is funded by the BUI. That's not just asking the wolf to guard the hen house, it's asking him to cater the party. She closed the laptop, the click sounding final. No, we can't go to anyone Lang controls. We need a bigger rival wolf. Who? The MCA, she said. The Metropolitan Commerce Authority. I'd heard of them. They handled the port, the trade licenses, the import-export taxes. The MCA and the BUI have been in a silent turf war for a decade, Tara explained, her eyes intense. Lang controls the city streets. The MCA controls the water. They despise each other. The MCA is cleaner, or at least, they're smarter. If we give them this, she tapped the laptop bag, this isn't just a political scandal. This is the weapon they need to take Lang down permanently. And they'll take Grigori with him. The decision was immediate. It formed in my chest, hot and solid. We give it to them. June. Wait. Tara put her hand on mine. The second we make this call, it's not our secret anymore. It becomes a public war. And you? You're the one holding the grenade. You will be target number 1 for everyone. Grigori, Lang, the BUI. I already am. Tara, I said, my voice hard. They photographed me leaving your office. They threw a brick through my window. Hiding isn't working. I looked out at the gray Lakefield morning, at the people walking by, oblivious. I'm done hiding. I want the truth on the table. Make the call. I told Cassian that night. He'd insisted on following me home, his SUV a silent shadow. We sat in the dark cab, the engine idling, the new steel security shutter on my shop looking like a scar. He listened, his face impassive, his large hands resting on the steering wheel. The MCA, he finally said. The name sounded like grit in his mouth. Tara says they're the only ones who can fight the BUI. They're a legitimate agency. She's right, he said. And she's wrong. Tara plays by the rules of the court. We are not in court. June? He turned to me. The faint glow of the dashboard lights carving his face from the shadows. The MCA is a government body. They're slow. They're political. They leak. You give that drive to them. You're not just starting a war. You're creating a public battlefront. You'll have Grigori and Lang's BUI operatives coming at you, and the MCA won't be able to protect you. They'll be filing paperwork while you're dodging bullets. So what's the alternative? I challenged, the fear turning to anger. I hide in your hotel, I cower in my workshop, and let you and your sister fight my battles for me. That was my shop they attacked, Cassian. This is my life they're trying to destroy. He was silent for a long moment, just watching me. You're right, he said. The admission quiet. It's your choice. You're bored. He took a deep, measured breath. But we do it my way. If you're going to walk into the fire, I'm choosing where we light the match. Tara made the call. The MCA was eager, unsettlingly eager. They wanted a meeting, immediately, not at their downtown offices, neutral ground. The old Watergate Center, Cassian told me 2 days later. He was in my shop, looking at a satellite map on a tablet. By the spillway. It's an abandoned container yard. It's a trap, I said, my throat dry. Of course it is, he said, not looking up. Which is why we're going to trap the trappers. Grigori thinks you're a frightened girl. Lang thinks you're leverage. We're going to use that. He didn't send Jax, not at first. He sent 4 men I'd never seen. Men who looked like longshoremen, who blended into the industrial haze of the docks. They were his scouts. They'd been on site for 24 hours, hidden, watching. You're not going in alone, he said. He handed me a small, dense black object, a thin vest. Cassian, I can't... Put it on. His voice was flat, leaving no room for argument. Under your jacket, or you don't go. Rowan will drive you. You'll be in her company van. Jax and I will be in the perimeter. You are not to get out of the van. You make the handoff. You leave. He handed me a new USB drive, identical to the one I'd given Tara. The data on this is a bait file. It's corrupted. It'll read as authentic for about 30 seconds, just long enough for them to verify it, and then it'll fry whatever reader they plug it into. The Watergate Center was a graveyard of steel. Rusting shipping containers were stacked 4 and 5 high, creating narrow, dark canyons. A cold drizzle had started, turning the dirt to thick mud. Rowan drove the Lakefield Music Supply cargo van, handling it like it was a sports car. She was tapping a complex rhythm on the steering wheel, completely calm. "Target acquired," she said, nodding toward a gap between 2 stacks of red containers. A single black sedan. 2 men stood beside it. They wore matching blue windbreakers with MCA embroidered in gold on the breast. They looked clean, official. "They don't look like Grigori," I whispered into the small radio Cassian had given me. "They're not supposed to," Rowan muttered. "They're not." Cassian's voice crackled in my ear, tight with static. "My scouts just tagged 3 more men. Warehouse rafters. To your left. They're carrying long-range gear. MCA doesn't use snipers for a data swap. This is Grigori, wearing costumes. It's an acquisition, not a meeting. Abort. Abort now." The 2 agents were gesturing for us to get out of the van. One of them put his hand on his hip, pushing his jacket back. "They're blocking us," I said, my voice rising. A massive flatbed truck, which had been parked and silent, suddenly roared to life, its headlights pinning us. It moved, pulling across the mouth of the container canyon. We were boxed in. The agents were running toward us now, their hands going under their jackets. "Rowan," I breathed. "Hold on, no," she snarled. She didn't try to go backward. She stomped on the accelerator and cranked the wheel, aiming the van at the solid steel wall of a container. Rowan, She wasn't aiming for the wall. She was aiming for a dark, narrow gap between 2 stacks, a gap that looked too small for a bicycle. The sound was a deafening, metallic shriek as the sides of the van compressed, scraping against the corrugated steel. Sparks flew like fireworks. We were thrown against our seatbelts, the van groaning in protest as metal tore. But we were moving. We burst through the other side, into an open yard of mud. Rowan didn't slow. She fishtailed, aiming for the main gate. The black sedan was already moving, speeding to intercept us. "They're cutting us off." "No, they're not," Rowan said, her eyes flashing. From our right, a second, larger Lakefield Music Supply box truck, a massive 24-footer, blasted through a chain-link fence, its horn blaring like a war cry. It T-boned the black sedan with the force of a freight train. The sedan crumpled like a soda can. Our van shot past the wreckage, through the smoking, destroyed fence, and onto the main road. I looked back. Jax was at the wheel of the box truck. He was already backing away from the wreck. Rowan was breathing hard, her knuckles white on the wheel. "Well," she panted, her voice shaking slightly, "that was loud." My trust in her, which had begun over the delicate bridge of a viola, was now cemented in twisted steel. We met Cassian at a disused ferry landing 5 minutes later. He got out of his SUV as we pulled up, his face grim. He looked at the mangled, sparking side of the van, then at Rowan. "You're loud," he said. "I was effective." She shot back. She glanced at me. "She's fine. Vest is clear." Cassian's shoulders dropped a fraction in relief. He looked at me, his gaze sweeping over me, checking the drive. "Still got it," I said, pulling the bait USB from my pocket. "Good, because the real meat is happening now." I stared at him. What are you talking about?" "You didn't think I'd risk you for a test, did you? June?" he said, his voice low. "The MCA team that contacted Tara was compromised. Grigori knew we were coming, so I arranged a second meeting." "With who?" "With the real MCA," he said. "The head of their internal security, a man who isn't on Lang's payroll. While Grigori was busy trying to ambush you at the Watergate, I had a separate team deliver the real drive to him, on the other side of the city. We just needed Grigori to show their hand. And they did." I was stunned. The entire thing, the risk, the chase, it was a diversion. "You used me as bait," I said, the words tasting like copper. His face hardened. "I used a decoy to draw a sniper's fire. There's a difference. I never let you get in range." Before I could argue, Jax, who had been scanning the perimeter, Stiffened. Boss Hillside, 2 o'clock. We all turned. Far up the hill, maybe 300 yards away, a figure was standing by the road. They were holding up a phone, recording us. The figure lowered the phone, and even from this distance, I recognized him. The desperate, predatory slump of his shoulders. Parker. He saw us spot him. He scrambled into a beat-up gray sedan and tore off. Damn it, I hissed. He just filmed us, Rowan said, the implication dawning. A secret meeting. Me, you, and Cassian, right after a BUI ambush. I understood instantly. He's not just running, he's building a narrative. He's painting you as the enemy, Cassian finished, his voice like granite. He's making it look like you're in league with me to take down the city. We were back in the SUV. The mood was grim. Jack spoke from the driver's seat. The takedown, it didn't go clean. The men in the sedan, we grabbed the driver before he could get out. He's Grigori Muscle. And Cassian asked? He talked, Jack said, his voice flat. He was scared. He said they weren't just grabbing the drive. They were grabbing Miss Calder. They were supposed to deliver her and the drive to something called the Blind Market. I've heard whispers, Cassian said, his eyes darkening. South Pier, a pop-up auction. They don't sell goods, they sell data. Secrets, blackmail. They were going to auction me, I whispered, the thought making me ill. They were going to auction the drive, Cassian corrected, his voice sharp, and use you as proof of authenticity. Parker's video just became his entry ticket. He's going to go there, I said. He's going to sell his proof that I'm working with you. He will, Cassian agreed, which means we have to shut it down before he does. I'm going, I said. Both Rowan and Cassian looked at me. No, Cassian said. It was final. Yes, I countered, my voice shaking but firm. Listen to me. You can't go. You, I looked at Cassian, are the king of Marrow Street. You walk in there, you start a war. And you, I looked at Rowan, just T-boned their car. They know your face. But me. I held up my hands, my luthier's hands, calloused and stained with varnish. I'm nobody. I'm just a girl Parker dragged into this. I'm the victim. I can get in. They won't be looking for you. They'll be looking for your army. I can be quiet. Cassian studied me for a long, agonizing minute. I saw the calculation in his eyes. I saw the pragmatic leader wrestling with the man who'd tried to teach me to hold a violin. You're right, he finally said, and I could tell it pained him. They won't expect you to be proactive. They expect you to be hiding. He pulled out his radio. We're changing the plan. We're not hitting the market. We're infiltrating it. He looked at me. But you don't go alone. Not for a second. You'll have this earpiece, a direct, open line to me. You'll wear the vest, and Jax will be your shadow. You do not engage. You find Parker, you get eyes on the data, and you get out. We handle the rest. He turned to Rowan. You and I were going to create the ultimate distraction. We're going to feed a rumor to Grigori that the real drive is moving tonight. On the other side of town, we'll split their forces. It was a 2-layer plan. A 3-layer plan. It was a game of chess played with lives. I'm not a pawn, Cassian, I said quietly as he handed me the small, flesh-colored earpiece. He looked at me, his gaze softening for just an instant. I know, he said. You're the queen. Now let's go take the board. The South Pier warehouse wasn't a building. It was a metal cavern. Cold and damp, smelling of rust and dead fish. The Blind Market was a pop-up city of folding tables and jury-rigged projection screens, all lit by the sickly blue-white glare of halogen work lights. This wasn't a place for the rich. It was a place for the desperate and the predatory. Men in suits huddled with men in hoodies, their voices a low, secretive hum. Software bundles. A man with a scarred face announced from a small stage. Proprietary code, B2B. We start the bidding at 50,000. He meant a corporation's entire payroll database. My disguise was simple black jeans, my father's jacket, and a heavy set of professional-grade headphones. My luthier's toolkit, slung over my shoulder, completed the look. I was just an audio tech, here to check the levels. The headphones were my lifeline. One cup fed me the ambient sound of the room, the other fed me the voices of my team. "I'm in," I whispered, my lips barely moving as I knelt to check a cable. "Main floor is packed." "Copy." Cashin's voice came back, impossibly clear, low and calm. "I'm on the catwalk, second level, northeast corner. I have eyes on the main stage and both exits." "West fire exit is rigged and clear," Jax added, his voice like gravel in the earpiece. "I'm on the outside." "And Rowan's voice cut in, unnaturally bright. "I'm a deeply unimpressed music producer looking for rare digital masters. God, the cologne in here could gag a horse. I'm near the main auctioneer. My job was simple, find Parker, get proof." I moved through the crowd, pretending to adjust floor monitors. My luthier's training, the years spent listening for the one sour note, had tuned my ears. I listened past the bidding. I listened to the rhythm of the room. And I heard the flaw. The guards, 2 of them patrolling the perimeter, their footsteps were off. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. It was a 7/8 time signature, a limp. One guard's patrol pattern was shorter than the other. "Cassian," I murmured. The guard on the south wall. "His rhythm is off. He's clipping his patrol short by 2 beats every 3rd pass." A pause. "I see it," Cassian replied. "There's a side door, leads to an unlit dock. He's slipping out. It's a security flaw, a blind spot." "Noted," I said. And then I saw him, Parker. He wasn't hiding. He was standing near a private, roped-off booth, and he wasn't alone. He was shaking hands with a tall, skeletal man in an expensive suit, the Grigori lieutenant, the man from the container yard ambush. Parker looked confident. He was smiling. That awful, proprietary smile he used to give me. He thought he was a player. He thought he'd finally found people who were better than me. I needed to get closer. I uncoiled a length of audio cable from my bag and moved toward a large speaker stack near their booth, pretending to troubleshoot. "And the beauty of it is, she's terrified," Parker was saying, his voice slick with newfound arrogance. He held up his phone. "I saw the video. Me, Cassian, and Rowan, meeting at the ferry landing. This proves she's with Vale. You circulate this, her life is over. She's a conspirator." The Grigori man looked bored. "And what's this to me?" "The squeeze," Parker said, leaning in. "She's weak. She'll do anything to make this go away, including returning to me. I'll get her back, and I'll get you whatever else she knows about Vale. It's the perfect leverage. She breaks. She's yours. She comes back to me. She's mine." My blood didn't just run cold. It froze. The old curse. You'll never find better than me. This wasn't about data. This was his last desperate attempt to own me. My hand was shaking, not with fear, with rage. I pulled out my own phone. I opened a Spectrum Analyzer app and audio tool, a perfect cover, and I hit the record button. I filmed the 2 of them. I filmed the handshake. I filmed the Grigori lieutenant sliding Parker a small metallic card, an encrypted, untraceable payment ledger, a coded receipt. "Got you," I thought, my heart hammering. "You want a legal weapon, here it is." Suddenly, the main auction stopped. The lights on the stage went blood red. The scarred auctioneer stepped back. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, his voice dropping, "an unscheduled lot, by private invitation only." The mood in the room shifted. This was the real market. "This is it," Cashin's voice said in my ear. "Rowan, get ready to spend money you don't have. Create a disturbance if I call for it." On the big screen, a new lot number appeared, Buy Prime. "They have the tape," I whispered, adrenaline flooding my system. "Worse," Cassian said. "They got the courier. Look stage left." 2 Grigori thugs dragged a man onto the stage. He was young, maybe 20, wearing a torn MCA windbreaker, his face bruised. He was handcuffed to a steel briefcase. "The delivery agent," Cassian hissed. "The real MCA agent. They must have grabbed him after my team made the drop. They're not just selling the data, they're selling the witness." "This lot is simple," the auctioneer smiled. "The data, and the man who validates it. Bidding starts now. Crypto figures flashed on the screen. The numbers climbed at a sickening rate. "Rowan, get ready to move," Cassian ordered. "Jax, on my mark. We're blowing the exit." "Wait," I said. A new voice cut through the warehouse, amplified by the very speakers I'd been checking. "I'll bid." Every head turned. Cassian. He was standing on the second-floor catwalk, bathed in the red light, looking down at the stage. He was the devil in their church. The Grigory lieutenant stepped out of the booth, his face a mask of cold fury. "Mr. Vale, you're not invited, and your money is no good here." "I'm not bidding with money," Cassian said, his voice echoing in the sudden, dead silence. He held up something small, a single, gleaming data chip. "I'm bidding with information. Your tape," he pointed to the stage, "is one conversation. This chip, this is the master encryption key for the BUI's entire internal server, a gift from my asset inside Vesper Lang's office, an asset you didn't even know existed." It was a bluff. It had to be. A magnificent, terrifying bluff. The lieutenant froze. The entire room was holding its breath. "And what?" the lieutenant asked, his voice a low growl. "Do you want in exchange for this library?" Cassian didn't pause. "Him." He pointed, not at the briefcase, but at the terrified MCA employee. "I'll take the delivery boy." The room was stunned. I understood instantly. He wasn't bidding on the data, which would have started a war. He was bidding on the person, a move so unexpected, so seemingly noble it threw them completely off balance. The lieutenant stared. It was too good a deal, which meant it was a trap. "A trick," he roared. "Get him! Get them all!" The world ended. The main lights didn't just go out. They exploded in a shower of sparks. We were plunged into absolute, deafening darkness. "Now," Rowan Cassian yelled, not in my ear, but for real. A sound like a cannon shot Rowan, shoving an entire stack of 8-foot-tall speakers off the stage. They crashed into the front row of bidders. Screams, panic. Then, hiss, fat. A blinding chemical green light erupted from the west exit, then another from the east. Jax. Road flares. The entire warehouse was filled with a choking, swirling green smoke. "June the Kid, west stairs go." Cassian's voice was in my ear again. I didn't think. I ran. I vaulted the rope barrier, grabbed the terrified MCA agent by his jacket. "With me, now stay low." We plunged into the green smoke. I could hear men shouting, things breaking. We hit the metal fire escape stairs, our feet ringing out. Clang, clang, clang. Footsteps behind us, heavy, 2 of them. A dark shape landed on the staircase between us and our pursuers. Cassian. He dropped from the catwalk. He shoved me and the agent behind him, turning to face them. One man lunged, a knife gleaming in the green, toxic light. It was too fast to follow. Cassian didn't dodge. He moved into the attack. He brought his left forearm up, a solid, intentional block. There was a wet, heavy thunk. The knife was buried in his arm. Cassian didn't make a sound. He didn't flinch. His other hand shot out, grabbed the man's head, and with a terrible final crack, slammed it into the steel railing. The man dropped like a stone. The second man froze, his eyes wide. A shadow appeared at the bottom of the stairs. Jax! He grabbed the second man by the ankle and yanked, pulling him headfirst into the concrete. It was over. "Go," Cassian grunted. He ripped the knife from his own arm and threw it, clattering into the darkness. A river of black blood poured down his sleeve. He shoved us down the stairs. Jax the barge move. We burst out the fire door into the foggy night air. The green smoke followed us, billowing out onto the pier. Rowan was standing on the edge of a low, flat barge loaded with lumber, her hand outstretched. "About time," she yelled. We scrambled aboard. The engine was already a low, throbbing rumble. "A parting gift," Jax said, and he tossed a small black device back into the open doorway of the warehouse. A bug. The barge slid away from the pier, the diesel engine muffled by the fog. We were swallowed by the night. We huddled in an empty shipping container on the barge's deck. The MCA agent was curled in the corner, shaking uncontrollably, still cuffed to the briefcase. Rowan was at the container doors, watching the pier disappear. Cassian slumped against the far wall. "Cassian," my voice was a whisper. I could see the dark, spreading stain on his jacket, even in the dim light. "Your arm." "It's fine," he bit out, his teeth clenched. "It's not fine, you're bleeding." I slid my toolkit off my shoulder. I wasn't a doctor, but I was a luthier. I knew how to fix things. "Let me see it." He looked at me, his gray eyes dark with pain. He didn't argue, he just held out his arm. I cut his sleeve away with my carving knife. The gash was deep, clean, and terrifying. It wasn't just a cut, it was a puncture. I fumbled in my kit. Wires, sandpaper, tape, I found it. A small, amber bottle of pure, professional-grade fish glue, and a small spool of clear, heavy-duty Mylar mending tape used for patching speaker cones. "This is gonna sting," I said. "It's clean. It's sterile. Just do it." I poured the thick, sticky glue directly into the wound. He hissed, a sharp, violent intake of breath, his whole body going rigid, but he didn't pull away. "It'll hold," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. My hands knew this work. It was a crack in the wood, a deep one. "It'll seal." I took the Mylar tape and, pulling the edges of the wound together, I wrapped his forearm, tightly. Once, twice, 3 times, I pressed it flat. It was a patch job, a hybrid of ancient craft and street-level first aid. He looked at the clear, sealed bandage, then at me. His breathing was heavy. We sat in silence, the only sound the thrum of the barge engine and the gentle lap of water against the hull. We had the agent, we had the bug, but Grigori still had the tape, and Parker was still out there, holding his own small, poisonous weapon. The game wasn't over. We just survived the opening move. The barge engine thrummed, a low, steady heartbeat in the fog. We didn't speak for a long time. The MCA agent, whose name we learned was Leo, had gone quiet, his shock turning into a kind of exhausted numbness. Rowan and Jax were just dark silhouettes, scanning the water. Cassian hadn't moved from the wall of the container. His face was pale in the gloom, his breathing still too controlled, the Mylar tape on his arm, my makeshift, luthier's patch, gleamed dully. Jax guided the barge into a silted, forgotten canal in Ashburn Yards, a part of Lakefield that had been left behind by the waterfront's glossy redevelopment. This was a place of old brick, rusting steel, and silence. "We walk from here," Jax said. We disembarked, the barge groaning as it settled. Jax led Leo away into the fog. "I'll get him clean. He'll be in a safe house by morning." Rowan touched my arm. "You good, June?" I nodded. "My car's 2 blocks over," she said to Cassian. "I'll circle back." He just nodded, and she was gone, swallowed by the mist. We were alone. "This way," he said, his voice rough. He led me down a cobblestone alley, the stones slick with rain. We weren't heading for a skyscraper. We weren't heading for a fortress. He stopped in front of a narrow, 2-story brick house, indistinguishable from the other workers' homes on the street, save for a new, heavy-duty steel door. He unlocked it, and the smell of old wood, coffee, and something metallic like his office hit me. It was not a penthouse. It was a home. He flipped a switch. The light was warm, coming from a single lamp in a living room filled with worn leather furniture and shelves overflowing with books. Not art books, engineering manuals, histories, biographies. A steady, rhythmic patter filled the silence. Rain. Hard rain, drumming on what must have been a tin roof somewhere. "This is," I started. "It was my mother's," he said, cutting me off. He shrugged out of his ruined jacket, letting it fall to the floor. The patch on his arm was dark underneath. "It's real." That was the only word for it. It was the place he kept his real things. "Go to the kitchen," he said, already heading for a back staircase. "There should be a first aid kit under the sink." I found it, It was a serious kit, the kind a paramedic would keep. I laid out antiseptic, sterile gauze, and butterfly bandages on the heavy butcher block table. The kitchen was small, clean, and dominated by an old industrial-grade stove. He came back down a few minutes later. He'd changed into a plain black t-shirt and gray sweatpants. His hair was damp. He'd tried to retape the wound himself, but the blood was already seeping through the fresh bandage he'd applied. Without his suit, without the armor of the boss, he looked different. He looked human. And he looked tired. "Sit," I said, motioning to a stool. He sat. The overhead light was a warm, honey gold, casting deep shadows on his face. He held out his arm. I gently peeled back my mylar and fish glue creation. The glue had done its job. It had sealed the wound shut. A strange amber scar, but it was angry and red at the edges. "This might sting," I said again, opening the antiseptic. "I've had worse," he murmured. As I cleaned the wound, I saw his hand. It wasn't shaking, but there was a fine, high-frequency tremor in his fingers. The adrenaline was leaving him. The steel was fading. My gaze traveled up his arm. It was a roadmap of his life, a pale, puckered scar near his elbow, a network of finer, silvery lines on his knuckles, and then I saw it a long, strange burn on the inside of his right forearm. It was old, patterned, like a brand. "What is this?" I asked, my fingers gently tracing its edge. "Steering wheel," he said, his voice quiet. "A hot rod I used to drive for the collective, back when I was 17. The wiring was bad. It shorted out in a rainstorm. The wheel got hot enough to melt plastic. You kept driving." "I had to," he said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "The delivery was late. It's just a mark." It wasn't just a mark. It was a testament. It was the story of the 2 years he'd missed a violin practice. It was the proof of the life he'd lived, the one that had hardened his hands and stiffened his wrist. It was the price he'd paid to become Cassian Vale. I finished cleaning the wound. It was deep, but clean. It didn't need stitches. Not yet. I applied the butterfly bandages, pulling the skin together with a luthier's precision. 1, 2, 3. I wrapped it in sterile gauze. My hands were steady. He was watching my face, not my hands. "Thank you, June," he said. I packed up the kit, my back to him. The rain on the roof seemed to get louder, filling the silence. "I hate this," I whispered, my voice thick. He tensed. "The house I can take you." "No, not the house. All of it." I turned to face him. My hands knotted at my waist. "I'm so afraid. I'm afraid of them. I'm afraid of what Parker is doing, but mostly," I had to force the words out, "mostly, I'm afraid of being a piece in a game. I spent the last 3 years as Parker's pawn. He moved me around his board, told me my value, told me what to think. And now I'm in your game. I'm the decoy. I'm the queen. But I'm still just a piece. I'm so tired of being a man's piece." The admission hung in the air. It was the truest thing I'd said aloud in my life. Cassian stood up, didn't step toward me. He didn't try to touch me. He just stood there, his newly bandaged arm at his side. He looked at me, his gray eyes stripped of all calculation, all strategy. Then, slowly, he took my hand, not my wrist. He didn't pull. He just took my hand, his calloused, scarred skin warm against mine, and he placed my palm flat against his chest. His heart was beating, not the slow, steady rhythm of the untouchable boss. It was fast, heavy, human. "In here," he said, his voice a low, rough rumble that I felt in my own chest. "You are not a piece. You are not a pawn." He held my gaze. "In here, June, you are the rhythm." I stared at him. The rhythm. Not the instrument, not the song, the core, unsteady, essential beat. My breath hitched. A tear I hadn't even felt coming slid down my cheek. I hadn't realized I was holding my breath until it escaped me in a small, broken neb. He didn't pull me closer. He didn't move. He just let me stand there, my hand on his heart, and feel him be human. I don't know who moved first. Maybe I leaned in. Maybe he did. But it wasn't a lunge. It was a drift. It was as slow as the fog rolling off the lake. The kiss, when it came, was not a claiming. It was a question. It started as a simple press of lips. It was slow, tentative. I could hear our breathing, his rough, mine shaky. It tasted like the rain on his jacket and smelled like the rosin dust on my clothes. It was the smell of the storm and the workshop, colliding. He didn't deepen it. He waited. He was letting me set the tempo. His hand, his good hand, came up, not to my face, not to my hair. It rested warm and solid on the small of my back, the same way he'd steadied me at the party. It wasn't a hand that pulled. It was a hand that held. A hand that said, "I am here. You are safe. You can fall." He pulled back, just a fraction of an inch. Our foreheads were almost touching. His gray eyes searched mine in the honey gold light. "June," he whispered. It was a question. It was the question, "Is this okay? Are you sure?" It was the first time in my life a man had ever really asked. I gave him my answer. I didn't use words. I nodded, a small, definite movement, and I did what I'd wanted to do in my workshop. I slid my hand from his chest up to his shoulder and then into his hair. I pulled him closer, not with force, but with the steady, certain pressure of a luthier tuning a string, finding the one. True note. He understood. This time, the kiss was different. It was deeper. It was a response. It was all the words we hadn't said. It was his promise of truth and my answer of trust. It was the release of all the fear from the last 48 hours. His hand on my back held me, protective, grounding me. My breath hitched and tangled with his as he moved, his lips tracing a line from my mouth to my jaw, his touch light as a bow on a string. I felt his breath, warm against my skin. My pulse was hammering in my throat, a wild, frantic rhythm, and I felt his lips brush against it, a silent acknowledgement of the life thrumming just beneath the surface. Our hands found each other, fingers lacing together. Our foreheads touched, and we just stood there for a long moment, breathing each other in. We moved together, not in a rush, but in a slow, shared rhythm, like two musicians who have played together for years, who can feel the next note without seeing the music. We were just listening to the rain, listening to the quiet of the house, listening to the silent, unspoken promise that in this room, on this night, we were not a boss and a luthier. We were just June and Cassian. When we finally broke apart, my lungs were aching. I was smiling, but the tears were flowing freely now. Not tears of fear, not tears of pain. They were tears of relief, the simple, profound relief of having chosen my choice, my terms, my rhythm. He wiped a tear from my cheek with his thumb, his touch surprisingly gentle. "Tomorrow," he said, his voice low and heavy with a truth I didn't want, but needed. "Tomorrow, the storm is still here. Lang and Grigori are still out there. And Parker," he didn't need to finish. He held my face, his gaze unwavering. "But tonight is ours." I nodded, leaning into his touch. Outside, the hard, driving percussion of the storm had softened. The rain on the tin roof was no longer a drumbeat of war. It had become a gentle, plucking sound, soft, measured. Like a pizzicato violin, a single clear note of promise in the dark. "Tonight is ours." That was what Cassian had said. But tonight ended. The next few days were a strange, suspended reality. The storm he'd promised was still out there, but he had pulled me into its eye. The world was raging just beyond the glass, but in my loft, we were quiet. He spent the night, not in my bed, but on my worn-out sofa, a silent, immovable presence who seemed to need the quiet of my workshop as much as I did. Then Sunday came. "I have a dinner," he said, "every Sunday. I want you to come." It wasn't the Rookery. It wasn't some high-stakes, velvet rope restaurant. It was Tia Maeve's. His foster mother's house was in the yards, not far from his own, but where his was silent and brick. Hers was loud and wooden, overflowing with life. The front porch sagged under the weight of too many people, and the air, for 3 blocks, smelled of rich, simmering stew. This was the woman, the neighborhood legend, who had raised Cassian, Rowan, and half of Marrow Street on nothing but casseroles and an iron will. Rowan was there, laughing a real, unguarded laugh in a heated argument with Jax over football. The house was chaos. Music played, spoons clattered on pots, and children I didn't recognize ran screaming through the living room. And in the center of it all was Tia Maeve. She was a small, solid woman in an apron, wielding a wooden spoon like a scepter. She didn't hug Cassian. She just smacked his chest with the spoon. "You're late," she grunted, then her sharp, dark eyes landed on me. The music didn't stop, but the room went quiet. I felt like a violin being inspected for cracks. She looked at my worn jeans, my calloused hands, and then at Cassian, who was standing, for the first time, in her shadow. "So," Tia Maeve said, her voice carrying over the music, "this is the Luthia." "This is June," Cassian said quietly. Rowan, bless her abrasive heart, broke the tension. "Tia, this is the one I told you about, the one who patched Cassian up with fish glue." She grinned at me. "And she's the one who grabbed the MCA agent at the market while these 2 idiots were busy starting a riot." Tia Maeve stared at me for a long, 10-second silence. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking into me. She was assessing my resonance. Then she turned, grabbed a heavy bowl, and filled it to the brim with stew. She shoved it into my hands. "You're too thin," she declared, not unkindly. "He needs someone who eats. Sit. No one eats until the family is all here." She turned back to the stove. Rowan winked at me. Cassian, I saw, let out a breath he hadn't known he was holding. I wasn't an outsider anymore. I was, apparently, family. Later, Cassian and I sat on the crowded porch steps, nursing beers. The air was cold, but the house was warm at our backs. "She likes you," he said. "She thinks I'm malnourished." He chuckled. He looked younger, less like the boss, more like the man. "I'm selling the gray routes, June." I turned to him. The gray routes were the core of the collective's shadowy income, the off-books shipping, the no-questions-asked logistics that Grigori had tried to muscle in on. "You're serious?" "I'm tired of the fight," he said, staring out at the yards. "I'm tired of nights like the blind market. I'm tired of patching up my own arm. I'm 35 years old. It's time to build something that lasts longer than a quarterly profit." "Like what?" "Like the Lakefield Artisans Fund," he said, testing the words. "A real, legitimate foundation. We fund apprenticeships. We take the warehouses we own, the ones we're using to store things, and we turn them into studios. Metalwork, glass blowing." He turned to me, his gaze intense. "A community workshop for instrument repair, for kids who can't afford a violin, let alone a lesson. I'd want you to run it." I was speechless. This wasn't just a job offer. This was a future. A clean one. A future with me. "Cassian, I fix fiddles. I don't run foundations." "You taught me how to hold a bow," he said simply. "You taught a shop full of scared teenagers at the market how to be calm. You know how to build things that sing. That's all this is." The warmth of that Sunday, however, dissolved in the cold Monday light. The storm was back. I was in my shop, replacing the pane of glass the brick had shattered. When he walked in, he wasn't Grigori Muscle. He wasn't one of Cassian's men. He was thin, wearing a perfectly pressed suit and carrying a thin government-issue clipboard. "Miss Calder," he said, his voice slick and devoid of warmth. "My name is of no importance. I'm with the Bureau of Urban Integrity." My blood turned to ice. Vesper Lang's personal army. "We're conducting an investigation," he continued, his eyes roving over my workbench, "into the distribution of protected city data. We have reason to believe you've been in contact with a person of interest." "I don't know what you're talking about." He smiled, a thin, reptilian gesture. "We have a file. You see, for a particularly troublesome data thief, codename Twilight Red, we know this person is active in your district. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. We know you've been fraternizing with the Marrow Street Collective. Vesper Lang takes security very seriously. It would be a tragedy. He ran a finger along the fine spruce of a cello belly I was carving. If a shop like this, with so many flammable materials, were to be found in violation of city zoning codes. The threat was unmistakable. He turned and left. I stood there, my chisel in my hand, shaking with a new kind of rage. I called Cassian. "I don't want your men," I said, my voice tight. "I don't want a fortress." "You won't get one," he said, his voice grim. "I won't put your life on lockdown. That's what Parker did." His solution was different. It was soft. Jax arrived an hour later. He wasn't carrying a weapon, he was carrying a toolbox. He installed 3 new cameras, so small they looked like screw heads, covering every angle of my shop. He replaced the panic button under my desk. "This one," he said, "is a direct line, not to dispatch, to me. You press it. I'll be here in under 3 minutes." Cassian was respecting my independence, but he was also wrapping me in a web of invisible, high-tensile steel. The BUI was subtle. Parker was not. On Tuesday, Rowan sent me a link to a new podcast, Lakefield After Dark. The episode was titled "The Luthier and the Lie My Life with June Calder." It was Parker. His voice, that familiar, smooth, confident baritone, filled my workshop. He was spinning a masterpiece of venom. "A woman I loved but deeply troubled. Fragile," he said, his voice thick with fake sympathy. "I tried to help her, tried to manage her finances. She was just so lost. And then she fell in with a known racketeer, Cassian Vale. I was afraid for her. But now," his voice hardened, "now I see the truth. She was using me. She was a gold digger, and she just found a bigger mine. She's trading secrets, city secrets, for protection." I threw my phone against the wall. The screen shattered. He was using my past, my fear, his control, as a weapon. He was branding me, just like he always had. "You'll never find better than me." I called Mira, my voice cracking with sobs of pure, unadulterated rage. Mira didn't console me. She got quiet. "Fragile," she said, her voice dropping to a dangerous low. "That son of a bitch. He wants to talk about Fragile, okay? I'll show him Fragile." Mira didn't go to a podcast. She went to Terra Win, and Terra went to war. The Marrow Street Collective, Cassian's organization, put its full, terrifying financial weight behind Terra. She filed a countersuit, not a quiet one, a very, very loud one. Defamation and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Her primary evidence, a sworn affidavit from a night shift nurse named Mira Santos, and as the press release stated, anonymized medical records and therapy transcripts documenting a 3-year pattern of sustained psychological coercion and financial control against her client. The media narrative, which had been sniffing around Parker's gold digger story, flipped. Overnight, the new story wasn't about a mob boss. It was about an abusive ex and the local artisan who was fighting back. I had to ignore it all. The BUI, Parker, the lawsuits. I had to work. I walked to the boarded-up warehouse Cassian had pointed out, the future home of the fund. I hammered a sign to the door, "Free workshop, learn to mend." 3 kids from the neighborhood showed up, all slouch and attitude, kids who looked like they'd rather be spray painting my walls. I didn't lecture them. I didn't try to save them. I handed them a warped, cracked viola. "This is broken," I said. "We're gonna fix it." For a week, we worked. I taught them how to heat hide glue, how to carve a bridge, how to listen. "You have to listen to the wood," I told them, as I showed a 15-year-old girl how to clamp a back seam. "It has a soul. It's been stressed. It has flaws. Our job isn't to hide the flaws, it's to find them and make them strong enough to sing." The kids listened, they worked, they were learning to mend something, and so was I. One afternoon I looked up. Cassian was standing outside, his hands in his pockets, just watching through the dusty glass. He wasn't the boss, he wasn't my protector. He was just watching. He wasn't looking at me with possession. He wasn't looking at me with the pride of an owner. It was a kind of quiet awe. He was watching me build my own world, separate from his, and I realized that was what he loved. He wasn't trying to absorb me. He was anchoring me so I could grow. It was the safest I had ever felt. The peace lasted until that night. We were in my loft, eating takeout Chinese food. It was normal. We were laughing about Tia Maeve's stew. His private phone buzzed, the one Jax used. He looked at it. The laughter died. The boss was back. "Jax," he answered. He was silent, listening. His entire body went rigid. "When?" He hung up. "What is it?" I asked, my container of noodles halfway to my mouth. "Grigori," he said, his voice flat, all the warmth gone. "The bug Jax planted, they're panicked. They think the BUI is setting them up. They're trying to dump the original tape, the briefcase. All of it. They've scheduled a trade. Tonight." "A trade?" "Bridge crack night," he said, already shrugging into his heavy jacket, the armor. "That's what they're calling it. Mercer Steel Bridge. They're giving the tape back to a BUI contact, trying to cut a deal and get out. Grigori is running scared." "Where are you going?" I asked, though I already knew. "To end it," he said. "They're exposed. They're sloppy. Jax and I are going to take the tape. We're going to cut the head off this thing for good." "You mean you're going to fight them for it?" "I mean I'm going to end it, June. Alone. It's the only way." I stood up. The old June, the one Parker had branded, would have cried, would have begged him to be safe. I was not that June. "No," I said. He turned, his hand on the doorknob. "This isn't the blind market. This isn't negotiable. You are not coming." "I know," I said, my heart hammering, but my voice clear. "I'm not coming. We are going." "June, this is a gunfight, he snapped, his patience gone. "This isn't a game." "I know, and you're playing it wrong," I shot back. "You go in there with guns. Cassian, you're just Grigori in a more expensive suit. You're just proving Parker right. The violence never stops. You just trade one shadow for another." "What is the alternative?" he demanded. "The light," I said, my voice shaking with the certainty of it. "We don't steal the tape, we expose it. You go in there to fight, you're fighting for a thing. We go in there to show them. We bring Mira. We bring the Harbor Line broadcast gear. We don't go to fight them. Cassian, we go to record them. We put the entire trade, Grigori, the BUI, Vesper Lang's men on the air, live. We bring the truth out of the shadows and into the light." He stared at me. The calculating boss faded. It was just Cassian, the man who had learned to breathe while holding a violin. He saw the logic. It was a move he never would have made. It was my move. "That's insane," he whispered. "They'll have men everywhere." "It's the only way out," and I insisted, grabbing my own jacket. "Your way just digs us deeper into the dark. My way ends the game. It burns the whole rotten board." He looked at his armored jacket. He looked at me. He made a decision. He pulled out his phone. "Jax, change of plan. Get Rowan, get the long-range audio gear, and call Mira Santos at Harbor Line. Tell her we're about to give her the biggest story of her life." The Mercer Steel Bridge was a skeleton of cold iron, suspended over the sleeping city. The wind didn't just blow, it screamed, a high-pitched harmonic whine as it tore through the girders. A thick, wet fog rolled in from the lake, swallowing the lights of downtown Lakefield, leaving us in an isolated, orange-lit bubble. My plan, my insane, desperate plan. "We're set," Rowan whispered, her breath pluming. She was posted in the cab of a maintenance truck she'd borrowed, 200 yards back, handling the high-gain parabolic microphone. "Mira," I murmured into the tiny mic on my collar. "Studio is hot. June," Mira's voice crackled in my earpiece, grounding me. "I'm looped into the main commercial broadcast server. When you give the word, I can hijack every station in Lakefield. You've got maybe 2 minutes before they trace the signal and cut me off. Make it count." "Jax," Cashin's voice, a low rumble from the shadows of a support tower. "North and south exits are covered. I'm mobile," Jax replied. I was in the center, dressed as a city surveyor, my audio broadcast gear packed into what looked like a standard laser theodolite case. I was the bait. I was the weapon. 2 sets of headlights cut the fog, arriving from opposite ends of the bridge. They met in the exact center, under the highest point of the arch, engines idling, forming a small, tense island of light. Grigori's black sedan, the BUI's official, government-issue black sedan. The Grigori lieutenant I'd seen at the blind market got out, carrying the steel briefcase, the one cuffed to the MCA agent, Leo. From the other car, a man stepped out. My blood didn't just chill, it turned to slush. It was him, the thin, slick agent from my shop, the man who had run his finger along my cello. "That's him," I whispered into the mic. "The BUI agent who threatened me, the one Cassian's file called Twilight Red." "I see him," Cassian said. His voice was dangerously calm. Grigori's man set the briefcase on the hood of his car. "We're done. Lang gets the tape. We get the exit." Twilight Red smiled, that same cold, reptilian expression. He didn't look at the briefcase. He looked at his Grigori counterpart. "Director Lang is pleased with your cooperation." The agent said, "He agrees. It's time to clean the slate. The tape is a loose end." He nodded at the briefcase. "And," he added, "so are the witnesses." Grigori's man looked confused. "What witnesses?" "The girl. Calder," Twilight Red said, his voice carrying on the wind. "And the MCA agent you failed to silence. Leo, Lang's deal is simple. You give us the tape, and we jointly take care of the loose ends. Calder, the MCA agent, and..." His smile widened. "Vale. We pin the entire thing on the Marrow Street Collective. A mob war gone wrong. Very tragic. Very clean." My heart stopped. They weren't rivals. They were partners. This was never a trade. It was a merger, the blind market, the attack on my shop. It was all theater, designed to flush me out, to make me run to someone. And they were here to eliminate everyone who knew. "Cassian," I breathed, my hand shaking on the broadcast transmitter. "They're here to kill us all." "I know," he said. "They're not just closing a loop, they're tying a noose." "But they don't know we have Leo," I realized. "They think we're all here to make a trade." "And they think we're stupid," Cassian said. He stepped out of the shadows. He didn't walk like a thug. He walked like he owned the bridge, his hands empty, his jacket open. "Evening, gentlemen," Cassian said, his voice amplified by the fog. "I believe you're discussing my assets." Both the Grigori man and Twilight Red went rigid. They had not expected this. "Vale," Twilight Red hissed, his hand moving inside his jacket. "You're a fool to be here." "I'm here for the exchange," Cassian said smoothly. "But your terms are wrong. You're not getting the girl, and you're not getting the MCA agent." "We're not negotiating with you," Grigori's man growled. "You're not," Cassian agreed. "You're negotiating with the city." He looked directly at me. It was the signal. My hand, shaking, flipped the master switch. "Now, Mira, burn it all." "On the air," Mira said. I angled the parabolic mic I was holding. Our conversation was now being broadcast live, hijacking the 10 o'clock news, the easy listening station, the sports talk radio, all of it. "I don't know what kind of game you think you're playing." "Vale," Twilight Red said, taking a step forward. "The one where you're exposed agent," Cassian said, his voice booming with authority. "You see, you're right. Director Vesper Lang does want to clean the slate, and he's starting with you." The agent's phone buzzed in his pocket, then Grigori's. A confused look. The agent pulled it out. He saw the live icon from the Harborline News app. He saw the transcript of what he'd just said. "Jointly take care of the loose ends. Calder." His face turned from smug to ashen white. "What is this? What did you do?" "It's called transparency," I said, more stepping out from behind the girder. I was holding the transmitter, the on-air light a brilliant, defiant red. "It's live. The whole city is listening. Your partnership. Your plan to clean the slate. Vesper Lang's name." "You!" Twilight Red shrieked, his composure shattering. From the shadows near Grigori's car, a figure stumbled out. Parker. He'd been hiding, listening. He looked like a cornered animal. His face was a mask of pure, unadulterated terror. He'd been used, he had been played by Grigori, and now he was about to be cleaned up by the BUI. His grand plan to leverage me, to force me back, had just blown up in his face. He saw the flashing red light in my hands. He saw me, standing. Not broken, he saw Cassian. He did the only thing his cowardly, controlling nature knew how to do. He lunged. Not at them, at me. June, you ruined everything, he screamed, his face contorted. He was trying to use me as a human shield. He never made it. A black shape intercepted him. Rowan, she came out of the darkness like a hawk, hitting him low at the knees. It wasn't a fight, it was an interception. He went down, his head smacking the pavement. Get off her, she snarled, trying to pin him. He was desperate, flailing, trying to grab her. But then a second, larger shadow was there. Jax. He put one knee, the weight of his entire body, on Parker's spine. Parker screamed. Jax ignored him, pulling his arms back, the snick-snick of heavy-duty zip ties closing the loop. It was done in 2 seconds. At the same time, Twilight Red raised his hand. It wasn't a phone, it was a pistol. He wasn't aiming at Cassian. He was aiming at me, at the broadcast. Shut it off, he screamed. I didn't have time to flinch. Cassian was there. He didn't push me. He didn't tackle me. He simply stepped in front of me, a solid, immovable wall. His back was to the agent. His eyes were on me. He was shielding me, a conscious, deliberate choice. He was ready to take the bullet. He was ready to be the anchor. A shot rang out. No, not a shot, a sound, a heavy, final click. Every light on the Mercer Steel Bridge went out. We were plunged into absolute, suffocating darkness, the fog turning the distant city lights into a muddy, useless glow. It was Cassian's signal, the one layered beneath mine. MCA, freeze, hands in the air, we have you surrounded. The voice was amplified, echoing from both ends of the bridge, heavy footsteps, dozens of them, the sound of heavy-duty tactical gear. The fog lit up, not with orange, but with the blinding, strobing blue and red of what seemed like the entire Lakefield police force. But it wasn't the police. As the tack lights flooded the scene, I saw them, men in dark blue, with MCA in bold yellow letters, and with them, a woman in a sharp, rain-slicked suit. That's the Northlake County DA. I heard Rowan breathe, stunned. They swarmed the bridge. The Grigori crew, their hands already high, were surrounded. The BUI agents, including Twilight Red, were frozen in shock. The DA walked straight through the chaos, her eyes landing on the still live broadcast gear in my hands. I presume, she said, her voice crisp and cold, that this is all the probable cause I'll need. It's all there, Counselor, Cassian said, Bassi, stepping away from me, his hands raised just enough to show they were empty. You've been listening. I take it. We've been listening ever since you gave my office the first drive, Mr. Vale, she replied, her eyes sharp. We were just waiting for them to confess. You, she looked at me, just handed us Vesper Lang on a silver platter. The BUI agents were being cuffed, but I didn't see him. Twilight Red, I said, scanning the chaos. Where is he? He was gone. In the split second the lights went out, the second before the MCA raid. He had vanished, melted back into the fog. Vesper Lang's top man was still in the wind. Jax hauled Parker to his feet. He was sobbing now, a pathetic, broken sound. She set me up. It was her. She's with him. Don't you see? She's a conspirator. Cassian looked at Grigori's lieutenant, who was on his knees. He looked at Parker, struggling against Jax's iron grip. This was his moment, the old Cassian, the king of the Marrow Street gutter, would have taken them. They would have disappeared, a bridge accident, a tragic statistic. But he just looked at the DA. These two, he said, nodding at Grigor's man and Parker, are all yours. I believe Mr. Holt has a defamation suit to answer for as well. He was handing them over. He wasn't taking revenge. He was cutting the last thread, stepping out of the cycle of violence, creating his own exit. "Secure them," the DA ordered. 2 MCA agents moved to take Parker from Jack's. In that exact moment, a black car, a Buick car, but not Twilight Red's, screeched onto the bridge, its lights off. The side door flew open, covering fire, not at us, but at the MCA team. Pop, pop, pop. Jack shoved me to the ground, covering me with his body. "Stay down!" It was over in a second. The car was gone, peeling out, disappearing into the fog. I looked up, my ears ringing. Jax was cursing, a low, vicious sound. The 2 MCA agents were fine, but the spot where Parker had been was empty. In the chaos of the BUI's diversion, he'd slipped his cuffs, he'd scrambled over the side railing onto the lower maintenance catwalk. He was gone. The fog had swallowed him, just as it had swallowed Twilight Red. The knot, the rotten, tangled knot of Parker Holt was still there, still a threat. Sirens wailed in the distance, the real police, finally arriving. The fog was thick with flashing blue and red, the lights reflecting off the dark, churning water below. A chapter was over. Grigori was broken. The BUI was exposed. But I was shaking. I couldn't stop. The adrenaline was draining, leaving a hollow, echoing fear. A hand found mine, Cassian's. He squeezed it. Once. Strong. Steady. Then his hand was on my back. It wasn't a possessive grip. It wasn't a push. It was just there. The familiar, warm, solid pressure that had grounded me at the party, in his house, and now, in the wreckage of our war. It wasn't a key signature. It was the tonic, the root note of the entire chord, the one that says, "You are home." We stood there, watching the law clean up the mess, and for the first time, I felt the wind die down. The fog over the Mercer Steel Bridge eventually lifted, but the fog of media speculation that descended on Lakefield was thicker. The city woke up to a story that was too big, too messy to be told in one headline. The official story, driven by the DA and the very real data from the real MCA, was a clean sweep Grigori syndicate decimated. The BUI under emergency investigation. Vesper Lang was suspended. Twilight Red had vanished. But the tabloids didn't care about that. They cared about us. The Lakefield Tatler ran a front-page to grainy photo of Cassian standing in front of me, his hand on my back, the flashing red and blue lights painting us as criminals. The headline, "The Mob King and His Luthier Mistress." I was no longer June Calder artisan. I was a femme fatale, a scheming mistress who had played both Parker Holt and Cassian Vale. My first instinct was to hide, to let the new steel shutter on my shop stay down, but the June who had hidden from Parker was gone. Mira, who had become a local hero at Harborline for her role in the broadcast, called me. "They're vultures. June, don't let them define you. Starve them." I took her advice. When a tabloid reporter shoved a microphone in my face outside my apartment, I just said, "I have to get to work. I have a 1952 viola with a warped soundpost." I became the brave artisan, as Harborline dubbed me, but I held the line. I refused to answer a single question about Cassian, about Parker, or about the bridge. I would only talk about the grain of spruce, the chemistry of varnish, and the soul of the wood. It drove them insane. While the media was busy trying to paint me as a scarlet woman, Cassian and I were busy building. The old warehouse in Ashburn Yards, the one I'd started my class in, was transformed. The Lakefield Artisans Fund was born. Cassian had funneled millions into it, all clean, all sourced from the sale of his first legitimate venture, a downtown property he'd held for a decade. The warehouse smelled of fresh-cut pine, sawdust, and opportunity. I was named artistic director. My kids, the teenagers from the neighborhood, were now my first paid apprentices. We weren't just fixing instruments, we were building them. They were earning a real paycheck for their first products. They weren't just at-risk youth. They were artisans. Cassian, meanwhile, was methodically dismantling his own past. He'd started selling off the gray parts of the Marrow Street Collective, piece by piece, the logistics, the off-books warehousing, the no-questions-asked transport. It culminated in a signed agreement, not with the DA, but with the Lake Commerce Authority, the fictional agency he'd used as a cover. He'd made it real. He'd signed a contract to convert his entire shipping fleet to a legitimate, taxable, city-partnered enterprise, the one non-negotiable condition, the creation of 200 permanent, union-wage jobs for Lakefield residents. He was laundering his legacy, turning shadows into paychecks. The new workshop became the heart of the new Marrow Street. Rowan, who had a law degree I never knew about, set up an office in the corner. She wasn't running logistics. She was negotiating recording contracts for local bands, right there among the wood shavings and glue pots, music and muscle, wood and ink, all meeting under one roof. Even Mira found a new path. She'd put in her notice at the ER. I'm tired of patching up the results of trauma, June. She told me over coffee one morning. We were sitting in the new workshop, the sound of a handsaw in the background. I'm switching to the community counseling program. I want to start before people end up on my gurney. It's time to heal the heart, not just the muscle. The world was healing, but the past was not a clean break. I received an email. It was from a law firm I didn't recognize. Subject, public apology and retraction. It was from Parker. It was a dry, legalese, 2-paragraph statement forced by Tara's defamation suit. I retract my statements on the Lakefield After Dark podcast. My allegations were unfounded. I regret the emotional distress caused to Miss Calder. It was pathetic, it was hollow, and it was a lie. Because at the exact same moment that email was sent, my new apprentices were calling me over to their workbench, looking at a video that was going viral on a local gossip site. Miss Calder, is this real? I looked at the screen. My blood ran cold. It was me. I was standing in the container yard at the Watergate Center, the place Grigori had set the ambush, and I was taking a thick manila envelope from Cassian Vale. The clip was grainy, shot from a distance. Parker's work. The film he'd taken from the hillside. He had doctored it, cut it, and leaked it. He'd fulfilled his legal obligation with the email, and then stabbed me in the back with this. The narrative was clear, and it was toxic. See, the defamation suit was a lie. She took the money. She was a paid informant all along. He was still trying to brand me. I looked at the faces of my apprentices. They looked confused, betrayed. The old June would have dissolved. The new June got angry. He's a liar, I said, my voice quiet, and I'm tired of his version of the story. Spread the word, this Friday. Here, I'm giving a recital. I didn't call the press. I didn't call Tara. I called Mira and Rowan and Tia Maeve. I put up a single flyer in the window of my old shop. One night, the Luthiers story, acoustic. Friday night, the warehouse was packed, not with press, with the neighborhood, the families from the yards, the kids from my program, the longshoremen from Cassian's new union. I walked onto the small, makeshift stage, holding only my oldest, most trusted violin. I didn't speak. I just played. I played the piece I'd been working on when Mira first called about the party, a frantic, unsteady, dissonant tune. I played the fear of the stairwell, the violence of the container yard chase, the cold terror of the blind market. Then the music shifted, the key changed, the melody became deeper, more resonant. I played the steady, warm note of Cassian's hand on my back. I played the rhythm of his heart under my palm. I played the sound of the rain on his tin roof. And finally, I played a new theme, bright, strong, full of sawdust and hope, the sound of the workshop. When I finished, there was a dead, stunned silence. That, I said, my voice amplified by a single, clean microphone, is my story. Now let me show you the truth. I turned to the large projector screen we usually used for apprentice lessons. Mr. Holt, my ex-boyfriend, released a video of me this week. I played his clip. The grainy, damning footage of me taking the envelope. The crowd murmured. "He's a very good editor," I said, "but he forgot one thing. Mr. Vale, in his concern for my safety, installed a few upgrades in my shop." I hit a new key. The screen changed. It was new footage, crisp, high definition, taken from the tiny camera Jax had installed over my workbench. The date stamp matched the container yard ambush just hours before. The video showed me standing at my bench. It showed me taking the bait USB drive, the fake one, and putting it in a manila envelope. It showed me putting on the Kevlar vest. "That," I said to the crowd, "is the envelope, the bribe, mister. Holt filmed me taking was a fake hard drive that I was carrying, as part of a plan to expose the BUI. It was evidence, not a payoff." I let the footage play. I showed them everything. The audio of the BUI agent threatening me, the pictures of the men who'd stalked my shop. I didn't just debunk Parker's lie. I burned it to the ground. I took his last weapon and turned it against him. I used the truth as a shield and a sword. The crowd erupted. It wasn't just applause, it was a roar. I looked to the back of the room. He was there, just as I knew he'd be. Cassian, leaning against the back wall, his arms crossed. He wasn't smiling. His face was undone. It was the first time I'd ever seen him look at me with raw, completely undefended pride. Later, after the crowd had cleared, I was packing my violin. "You were incredible." I turned. He was standing in the shadows of the backstage area. "I just told the truth, Cassian, the way you promised you would." He walked closer. The air between us was still charged. He stopped just in front of me. He looked at the violin in my hands, then at my face. "I love you, June," he said. The words were quiet. They weren't a storm. They were the calm, deep water beneath. They were the root of the tree. I smiled. It was a slow, easy smile. "I know." He looked surprised. "You know, I've known for a long time," I said, setting my violin in its case. I looked up at him. "I knew it the moment you let me keep the USB." He stared at me, understanding. My love for him wasn't based on the grand gestures, the rescue, the fund, the protection. It was based on that first, quiet moment of respect, the moment he'd seen me as an equal, not an asset. He reached out, his hand tracing the line of my jaw. I leaned into his touch. "We should get married," he murmured, his thumb brushing my lips. I laughed, a real light sound. "No." He pulled back, his brow furrowing. "No, not yet." I put my hand over his, the one against my cheek. "We're not ready for that. Look at this." I motioned around the workshop. "This is a foundation. Cassian, we're still building it. You and I were a foundation, too. We don't need a fast wedding. We need to build this right." He understood. He smiled, a real, unguarded smile. "So we didn't plan a wedding. We planned a charter. We spent our nights drafting the bylaws for the Artisans Fund. We wrote scholarship applications for our apprentices. We wrote a new, public, transparent charter for the new Marrow Street Collective, one that would be filed with the city. We were building our future with real, honest grain." The piece lasted for 2 weeks. Then, the final knot. An engraved invitation arrived, the annual Lakefield City fundraising gala. The mayor, the DA, and a newly appointed interim director for the BUI were all attending. It was the city's attempt to heal after the scandal. Cashin and I were invited, the new, legitimate power couple. But taped to the back of the invitation was a small, cheap, folded note. My blood ran cold. I knew the handwriting. Parker. "Go to the gala, look happy, but I'll be watching. If you don't show up at the North Lake Conservatory behind the hall at 10 o'clock sharp, alone I will personally walk onto that stage and ruin not just your life, but his. I have one last piece of evidence. Don't test me. June." He was still trying to pull the strings, still trying to isolate me, still trying to prove that, in the end, I would always be his. The note was cold in my hand. 10 o'clock sharp. Alone, or I will ruin you both. I didn't hide it. I didn't panic. I just walked into the living room of Cassian's brick house, where he was reviewing the final charter for the Artisans Fund, and I placed the invitation and the cheap, folded note on the table. He read the invitation. Then he read the note. His face didn't harden. It didn't change at all. He just went very, very still, the way he had in the stairwell at the Harbor Line party, just before the violence started. "He's still trying to control you," he said, his voice a low, dangerous flatline. "He's still trying to make you his... He thinks he can isolate you." "He can't," I said. "No," Cassian agreed. He looked up at me. "But he's given us an opportunity. He thinks he's setting a trap, but he's just told us exactly where he'll be and when. He wants you alone. He wants you scared. We will not give him either." He lifted the embossed invitation. "We're off to the gala, and we're going to look very, very pleased." The North Lake Conservatory was a cathedral of glass and steel, built to impress. The gala was the city's desperate attempt to whitewash its own image after the BUI scandal. And the BUI itself, under new interim leadership, was the primary sponsor. They were trying to rinse their reputation, as Rowan had put it. The glass ceilings were hung with thousands of tiny, fiber-optic lights, a shower of artificial stars. It was beautiful, and it was a complete lie. I'd spent 2 days' worth of my workshop earnings on a dress. It wasn't a glittery ball gown. It was a simple dark green velvet with a square-cut neckline, almost identical to the black dress I'd worn to the Harbor Line party. But this was my choice. It was my armor. Cassian, he looked like he'd been born in a tuxedo. He was the picture of legitimate, old money power. We stepped out of the SUV. Jax wasn't driving. He was already inside, as was Rowan, and I knew Mira, Tara Wynn, and the North Lake DA were also here, at our invitation. Cassian offered me his arm. I took it, but as we walked through the grand entrance, his hand slid from my elbow to the small of my back. The title of the story, The Tattler's Ugly Headline, The Mob King and His Luthier Mistress. We walked into the main hall, and the sea of champagne and sequins parted. The whispers were immediate. The stares were like knives. They didn't see the man who'd just created 200 jobs. They didn't see the woman who had just opened a community music school. They saw the legend. They saw the scandal. Cassian ignored them. He kept his head high, his hand a warm, steady pressure guiding me. He was not ashamed. He was not hiding. He was proud, and his pride was my shield. We were making our way toward the DA when a figure stepped directly into our path. Parker. He looked terrible. He was thin, his eyes wild and bloodshot, his suit rumpled. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in weeks. He'd been hiding, festering, stewing in his own poison. "June," he hissed, his voice cracking. He tried to grab my arm. Cassian stepped in front of me, a silent, effortless block. Parker flinched, pulling his hand back as if he'd touched a hot stove. "Not here, Parker," Cassian said, his voice low. "Oh, yes, here," Parker said, a desperate, high-pitched laugh bubbling in his throat. He wasn't just desperate, he was unraveling. He turned and practically leaped onto the low stage, grabbing the microphone from the jazz singer, who was on a break. The music screeched to a halt. A high-pitched feedback squeal filled the hall. Every head turned. "Good evening, Lakefield," Parker yelled into the mic, his voice echoing off the glass. "Good evening, hypocrites." The DA started to move. Cassian put a hand on her arm. "Wait," he murmured. "Let him." "You all read the news," Parker panted, his eyes scanning the crowd, wild. "You all read the lies. You think she's a hero?" He pointed at me. The entire room. 300 people stared at me. "You think he's legitimate?" he sneered at Cassian. "I have something you all need to see. The real truth." He fumbled with his phone, plugging it into the audio-visual system. The large screens above the stage, which had been showing the BUI's logo, flickered. A new video appeared. It was dark, grainy. It was me. at the Watergate container yard, but it was cut differently. It showed me handing Cassian the envelope, then taking it back, then it cut to Cassian, nodding and me smiling. Then new audio I'd never heard. "It's done." A voice that sounded like mine said, "I sold him the fake drive. He'll take the fall." It was a fake, a deep fake, a complete poisonous fabrication. Parker had used his last desperate dollar to have it made. He was trying to frame me for framing him. The crowd gasped. The whispers turned to a roar. "She set them all up," someone yelled. Parker was smiling, a triumphant, ugly grimace. He had his stage, he had his audience, he had me. I looked at him. I wasn't afraid. I was just tired of him. I let go of Cassian's arm. I walked calmly to the stage. I didn't run. I didn't shout. I walked up the steps, took the second microphone from its stand, and nodded to the sound tech. "Please cut the music," I said, my voice clear and calm. It cut through the hall like a perfectly tuned note. Parker stared at me, his smile faltering. He hadn't expected this. "Mister, Holt is a talented storyteller," I said, my voice echoing, strong. "He's also a liar, but he's right. You all deserve to see the truth." I turned to the crowd. "So I'd like to invite to the stage miss, Tara Wynn, my attorney, and, if she wouldn't mind, Northlake County District Attorney Reynolds." The crowd parted again. Tara and the DA, looking grim and professional, walked to the stage. "Mr. Holt's video is a fabrication," I said, "and we have the proof, Tara." Tara took the mic. "The evidence, mister. Holt is showing was created 24 hours ago at a data farm offshore. My office has the logs. What we have," she said, nodding to the tech, "is the truth. First, the official. Authenticated broadcast logs from Harborline News, time-stamped from the Mercer Steel Bridge, the raw audio of the BUI and Grigori Syndicate admitting to their partnership in their own voices. The speakers boomed, the audio from the bridge. Twilight Red's voice, "Jointly take care of the loose ends," filled the hall. People gasped. The interim BUI director looked like he was going to be sick. "And second," I said, taking the mic back, "Mr. Holt's final lie. He's been painting himself as a victim, a man caught in the middle. But Rowan, would you mind playing your video?" In the back of the hall, Rowan, at her own AV station, hit a key. The screens changed. It was my footage, the footage I had taken, at the blind market, crisp, clear, undeniable. It showed Parker, shaking hands with the Grigori lieutenant. It showed him holding up his phone, showing the video of me. The perfect leverage, his voice echoed. And then, the final, damning shot, the close-up of the Grigori lieutenant handing Parker the coded, metallic payment card, the receipt for his betrayal. The hall was silent. The entire city establishment had just watched Parker Holt sell me to the underworld. Parker looked at the screen. He looked at the crowd. He looked at me. And he broke. The sound he made was inhuman, a high-pitched wail of pure, cornered animal rage. "You," he shrieked. You bitch, I gave you everything." He lunged at me, not with his fists. In his hand was a long, sharp, silver letter opener, stolen from the gala's check-in desk. Cassian was already moving. He was launching himself at the stage, a protective roar in his chest. But I was closer. I didn't retreat. I didn't scream. I saw the blade coming. I saw his wrist. I stepped in, not away. I met his arm with my own. Deflecting his thrust upward, I used his own momentum, grabbing his wrist with both my hands, twisting it, bending it back, a move Mira had drilled into me after the first time Parker had grabbed me, a basic, brutal wrist lock. His fingers uncurled, the letter opener clattered, harmless, onto the stage. Parker stared at his empty, twisted hand, his face a mask of complete, utter shock. Two men in black suits, principal protection on their jackets, were on him. They slammed him to the stage, face down. It was over. "And get these," Tara Wynn said, walking past the security, tossing a file onto Parker's back. his leaked emails, discovered in my lawsuit, showing him communicating with Vesper Lang, trying to sell his video to the BUI a month ago. He was playing both sides. The BUI director turned and walked, very quickly, out of the hall. The gala was over. The BUI was finished. Cassian was on the stage, his hands on my arms, his eyes scanning me for wounds. "Are you okay, did he?" "I'm fine," I said, my voice steady. I put my hand on his chest, over his heart. "I'm fine." He didn't pull me into a hug. He just stood there, his hands on my shoulders, and let me breathe. He turned to the stunned, silent crowd. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't gloat. He just spoke, his voice carrying the simple, final truth. "My name is Cassian Vale," he said. "For years, this city has whispered about me. Tonight, you saw the truth. You saw a man." He nodded at Parker, who was being hauled away, who chose to threaten, to control, to destroy. He then looked at me, and his gaze, that was just for me. "We," he said, "choose to build." He motioned to the side of the stage. Mira stepped out, her face beaming, and behind her, my kids, my apprentices, 6 of them all in matching clean black shirts, their hair combed, their eyes wide with a mixture of terror and pride. Each of them was holding an instrument they had helped build. They set up. They didn't have sheet music. They looked at me. I nodded. I walked over, picked up the violin I had brought and tucked it under my chin. I looked at Cassian, and I started to play. It was the piece I had written for the workshop, the theme of sawdust and hope. The kids came in, their notes a little shaky, but full of heart. The cellos I had mended, the violas they had glued. The sound wasn't perfect, it wasn't professional. It was real. It was the sound of wood and resin and hard work. It was the sound of the new Marrow Street. When we finished, the silence was different. It wasn't shock, it was respect. The DA was the first to clap, then Tara, then the entire, shattered, humbled room rose to its feet. The MCA director took the stage as the applause died. "In light of tonight's revelations," he said, glaring at the empty BUI sponsor banners, "my office is announcing a full, special investigation into the BUI, effective immediately. Director Vesper Lang is hereby suspended." The applause was deafening. Amid the sound, Cassian leaned in close, his lips brushing my ear. "If you want," he whispered, so low only I could hear, "I'll wait as long as it takes, a year, 10 years, for the charter, for the wedding, for anything." I stopped playing. I looked at him, then I looked past him, at the massive glass wall of the conservatory. The artificial stars were bright, but beyond them, I could just make out the faint, industrial glow of Ashburn Yards, of Marrow Street. I saw my future. It wasn't this. It wasn't galas and glass ceilings. It was the smell of dry wood, and hot glue, and turpentine. It was the sound of a bow being drawn across new strings. I looked back at him, and I nodded. It wasn't a yes to a proposal. It was an agreement, a quiet, final chord, a silent understanding that we were done building the foundation. It was time to build the house. We left. We didn't stay for the congratulations. We just left. That night, back in my loft, the rain was falling, a fine, soft mist like rosin dust, pattering against the new glass of my workshop window. I picked up my violin. I started to play the new song, the one we'd played at the gala. I heard him come in. I didn't stop. I felt him come to stand behind me. He didn't touch me. Not at first. He just stood there, listening. And then I felt it. His hand, warm and solid, resting on my back. It wasn't pushing me. It wasn't holding me. It was just there. A support, an anchor, a promise that I was, and always would be, free to make my own music. The knot was finally untied, not with violence, not with blood, but with light. Thank you so much for listening to our story. I'm so curious to know where in the world you're tuning in from. Please, let us know in the comments below so we can connect, and share your thoughts on June and Cassian's journey. Don't forget to subscribe to Mafia Boss Stories, like this video. And if you enjoyed the story, please support us by hitting that hype button so more people can hear it.